Hello, I'm Babs. It's great to see you. I'm looking forward to us leaning into wellness as we work together to build a better life. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Leaning Tower of Pisa and why does it lean, and how we can build our own foundational values that will help us be more stable. One of the interesting things about the Leaning Tower of Pisa that was begun to be built in the year 1173 is that it was built between two rivers, and it was built on a bed of clay and sand and shells. Not the best foundation. If there would have been a civil engineer involved in this at the beginning, I'm guessing that it would have been a no. Or at a minimum, someone would have said, we're not building this foundation only 3 meters deep. If we're going to build like this, it needs to be 60 meters deep. We really need to deep dive this if we're going to do it right. We can't really come up with a great structure that's going to be stable if we build it on this shallow of a foundation. Now, this was interesting also because we think we know who the architects were, but we're not sure. I'm guessing we didn't have a lot of people wanting to claim responsibility, but right away, within the first couple of stories of building the structure, there were wars that broke out in the region, and so they were busy doing other things, but also the tower began to lean right away. Now, the Leaning Tower is a bell tower as part of a religious structure in Pisa, an area where there was a cathedral, and this was going to be the beautiful bell tower. Luckily, a lot of it was built from limestone, which is probably why it's mostly stayed somewhat stable, but the exterior then is covered in marble. There's a lot of white marble with the building, and it is quite beautiful. But over the centuries, as the structure was built up, the lean went all the way to a 5.5 degree lean. And that became very dangerous. And in fact, by the year 1990, the government shut down tours into the building because it was leaning so heavily. Now, different methods were tried to sort of straighten the structure. One of the things that ultimately was tried is sinking some huge lead weights to kind of try to keep the structure from leaning or tilting any farther. And then huge bands were put around the structure to kind of hold it in place. On the other side, holes were drilled down deep under the ground so that it would gently collapse into that side to help bring the lean up a little bit. So interestingly, that became a 4 degree lean, which is much safer than a 5.5 degree lean. And so this structure is now opened for people to come in and out again, and has been for several years, many years. When the bells were first placed in the tower hundreds of years ago, the heaviest bells couldn't even still be rung because they were afraid it would topple the entire structure over. So there are a lot of things about this foundation not being steady that really have caused an issue over the generations. Our own lives can be like this. Our foundation can be too shallow. We cannot have foundational values that really serve us and reflect who we are or who we would like to be perceived or who we would actually like to be. Foundational values are really crucial to building a stable structure of who we would like to be. So for example, if you as a young person are a great athlete and you saw yourself as someone who was going to be this great athlete in college or maybe even professionally, and then you have a series of injuries or one injury that disallows you from playing that sport anymore. This can cause some real damage. If that is your foundation, is that I am an athlete. I am this kind of athlete, and that is who I am. That foundation may not be deep enough for you. But if you are able to take the determination, the grit, and the discipline that you received from your hard work of working as that kind of an athlete, and you can transfer that over into another part of your life, those are the foundational values that can help you build on a 60-foot foundation or a 60-meter foundation instead of a 3-meter foundation. And that can help your structure stay the way that you want it to be for your life. We also can make mistakes in our lives that we feel can preclude us from being able to move forward into an area we'd like to be. In fact, everyone will make mistakes that may feel like I cannot go on in a certain area. This has really destroyed my capacity to do this thing or that thing. When in reality, every single person on the planet makes mistakes. And we need to determine what are the things that we care about in life that we can build on, that we can make that correction. Maybe that we put the lead weights down and the straps around our building, and then we correct the foundation. Now, one thing about the Leaning Tower is after they did all of this work to bring the tower up, still leaning because it now needs to lean, that's part of its identity, but there's now a great drainage system. So we can create our own drainage system so that we don't continue to lean farther and become less structurally sound. So our foundational values might be gratitude. We want that gratitude so that we can be the kind of person that's thankful and that expresses gratitude to others. Maybe we realize that integrity is important to us, and we want to build that integrity, that we become people of our word, that if we say we're going to do something, that we do our best to get that done, that we do our best to participate in a way that we say we will. Maybe it's important to us as a foundational value that we are reverent. That means that we're respectful of other people's beliefs, that we listen when other people have something to say, even if we don't agree with it. Maybe it's important that we show humility. What your foundational values are depend on you. What matters to you? What are the things in your culture that you want to keep that make your foundation stronger and more purposeful? Many of us have as a foundational value a value on our families. So we need to have the way that we interact with them reflect that. We need to have the way that we work with others reflect our values. That requires a certain amount of discipline. That requires some foundational work where we purposefully try to improve ourselves and to remember what our foundational values are that we're working toward. It is important that we remember that if we have a foundational value of respect, that I will respect and value someone else's journey in life, their walk in their life, that I try to find ways to actually be that person. When we don't align our actions with our values, that's when we have cognitive dissonance, and that is a misalignment. That's when we tilt. That's when our foundation is weak. So we want to try to strengthen and move towards strengthening our actions to fit our values. And in order to do that, we have to determine what our values actually are. I know that as we do this, that we'll feel better and better about ourselves, that we'll have a greater capacity for living our foundational values and for having a strong and sturdy structure Not starting out with a great structure or great foundation is not a deal breaker. Just look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You could still have a beautiful structure. You can still make corrections. My goodness, they think that's going to stay standing at least another 2 or 3 centuries. So remember that mistakes and not having a good sense of yourself right this minute, it's okay. We can build those foundational values. We can get better at living them. Have a great day. I hope we can lean into wellness to build a better life.